Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Today I have a very special guest. Troy Meyers is a college athlete who started buying and selling motorcycles in college. After buying and selling over 20 motorcycles between his junior and senior year, he started flipping houses with his wife before redirecting their attention to multifamily investing. Troy has been blessed financially, but also realizes there's much more than building wealth. Through his faith in Christ, he is leading Troy towards using it for his kingdom. Troy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Before we get into what you do, I'm always curious, how did you get to where you're now? Are you, was there a family of entrepreneurs you come from? Where does that entrepreneurial spirit come from?
Yeah, there's not a family of entrepreneurs. Myself and my wife definitely come from W-2 kind of families. So really just an ambition and wanting to strive to always improve myself and in my family's position.
Was there anything from coming from a W-2 family, though, that made you go in the opposite direction? Because that is a drastically opposite direction.
Yeah, no, honestly, I currently have a W-2 job as personally. I would like to get out of it, and I think that's going to be sooner rather than later. But I think just educating myself and on what else is out there and having the freedom and the flexibility that comes apart from a W-2 job is really kind of what stirred my fire for that.
100%. I feel you there. What initially sparked your interest in buying and selling these motorcycles? I'm so curious about that.
Yeah, so I grew up riding dirt bikes, and so that was kind of what sparked my interest in motorcycles. And then, but my mom didn't want me to get a motorcycle, but I told her, "Hey, this deal is so good. If I buy this deal, I can sell it and make money." And so because of that, she allowed me to buy it. I rode it for a month, and I was like, "Okay, I am going to see if I can sell this." Ended up, turning a profit. Didn't fix it up. I just rode it while I had it, and ended up selling it for about $1,500 more than I bought it for. And when you're in college, $1,500 is quite a bit of money. And so I was like, that was cool. Let's try and do it again. And that kind of snowballed.
So after that first one, then,
yeah,
is that where everything clicked? And then what was your strategy to purchase them for prices you thought you then could turn it around and flip it for a profit? Like, tell me about the formula and how all that worked.
Yeah, so the formula that I really focused on was either Craigslist at the time, because this was back in like probably 2010, 11, 12. And so Craigslist at the time, or Facebook Marketplace. And Facebook Marketplace was just becoming new. But my focus was buying it from small towns that didn't have a big audience. And so I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana, but I would travel down to southern Indiana, the small towns in Kentucky, buy them, and then bring them up to Indianapolis and write a better description and market it better. And that's how I would turn the profit. And so really, people ask all the time, did I know mechanically? Did I fix them up? Did I do anything? I didn't do anything other than ride it while I had it. And then the whole buy low, sell high, I would look for posts that, had been online for a while, and I would offer them $1,000 under what they were asking or even less, and say, hey, I can be there tomorrow with cash in hand. But then I wouldn't be in a hurry or desperate to sell it on the other end when people did that to me.
And you said you were doing this during college. So tell us, how did college intertwine with this in terms of was there anything at all from the education you were getting that helped you with this endeavor?
I was an econ major, so of course business is in the background and those business concepts. But no, it was strictly buy low, sell high, get enough money so that I could have some fun while in college.
Right, and we're gonna jump into we're eventually gonna get to what you do now. I know you went into real estate, and now you're still in there, and you're technically W-2, you say, but I think you're an investor as well. I'm curious though. So before we get into that, exactly that stuff is there anything then from college that actually played into what you do? And it's okay to dig. Look, I teach at 2 universities, and I'm still okay with saying most of college is a waste of time and money.
Yeah, I think, did it play into what I do now?
Yes.
as far as I think college got me into the door to the job that I'm working now.
Okay.
So I think it was a barrier of entry. Do I think that it was that the material was substantial to what I'm doing now? I would say no.
Amazing. Yeah, you just hear it over and over again. I'm really glad you clarified that. It's like it seems like it's a barrier to entry, if
Yeah,
anything. Yeah.
yeah.
What skills or lessons then do you think that when you went through your, I think it was 20 or so sales with the motorcycles, carried into real estate?
Yeah, don't be afraid to make offers. Don't be afraid to be told no. You never know what's going to happen. There were many times that I would make an offer and they would basically tell me to go pack sand. But then 2 weeks later, they'd be like, "Hey, is that offer still good?" So you never. I mean, just not being afraid of being told no and rejection.
Yeah, huge, so huge for everybody. I know rejection's hard. It's hard for people
Yeah,
to take
of
personally,
course.
professionally, on all of that. Yeah, with especially, and then even if you get the rejection professionally, then you somehow you're still a human, so you take it personally in some kind of way.
Sure.
When you got into real estate, tell us how you were dipping your toes into it. Like, what exactly were you doing?
Yeah. So the first real estate play that we bought. My wife and I we were engaged at the time, and I just wanted a house for us to move into once we got married. And so I bought a foreclosed house, and like I said, this was. I think the first house that I purchased was in 2013. So you could still find some foreclosures, some short sales, and stuff like that. So I kind of focused on that because I'd heard that that's kind of a good place to start and gain some equity. I like to hustle. I like to put sweat equity in, so I wasn't afraid of that. But I also wanted more putting lipstick on a project rather
Mm-hmm.
than having to do structural work and stuff like that. So I knew enough to be dangerous. This was also at the height of HGTV.
Mm.
So between what I knew from friends and family, kind of knew what I was looking for. So we bought a 3-bed, 2-bath foreclosed house close to where I grew up, and so I knew the market pretty well. And it was $95,000 at the time, and so really just put lipstick on it. Switched out the carpets, painted the walls. Really just put a refresher on it. We painted the kitchen cabinets, put new countertops on it, but it wasn't a heavy lift at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what got me started.
What then was there a pivotal moment or experience though that once you started flipping houses like this, is because it sounds like essentially that's what that was, that made you want to focus more on multifamily?
Um, so we moved into that one, and for tax purposes, we owned it for 2 years,
Two
lived
years,
in it
yep.
for a majority of that 2 years, and then we flipped it, and we ended up selling it for 155, and then we snowballed that into the next one, and we actually did that with our primary resident 3 or 4 different times before we kind of got into a more established home. And my wife was like, "Hey, I don't really want to move every 2 years anymore." And my job, my W 2 job, I've worked as a multifamily developer for a national multifamily firm. And so I had that, that this is 8 years into my, 7, 8 years into my career. So I've seen the benefits and kind of got a competitive advantage in the multifamily space because I do that on the daily. And so that's where I was like, okay, well, let's dip our toes into duplexes and triplexes and small multi, since we're not wanting to flip our primary resident every 2 years. And
Sure.
my wife has a W 2 job, I have a W 2 job. And so we had the capital
Mm-hmm.
to invest in some small multifamily, but we didn't necessarily have all the time to just keep putting our time and effort into flips on a consistent basis.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, yeah, that totally makes sense. Like that's a logical sequence of how it would work.
Yeah,
I'm with you. Like I did the same thing as you guys in the sense of my first house, same thing. Lipsticked it. There wasn't a
yep,
lot of really. There was some structural stuff, but I guess I was a carpenter since I was the age of 13, so I could do some of that stuff, and I was happy to do it. It was a beautiful endeavor. Flipped it again for kind of the same kind of profit you're talking about, and then moved into the bigger house. But I couldn't imagine either
yep,
doing that over a decade or something. At some point, it's got to
right,
stop, and then you do get enough capital, you can then get in that bigger stuff. So that
right.
was great. I would just recommend to anybody who's listening, like, man, you can that 2 year, the way it works with the 2 years is still in play. Like it's
Yep,
a way to
of
house
course,
hack. Like
of course.
you can still make it happen. You just have to maybe not have the brand new car or go on vacation and sacrifice
Exactly.
for a few years. So the word sacrifice kind of brings me to my next question here. And I'm not saying you have to sacrifice what you're doing right now in order to, keep your faith aligned with your business endeavors. But how do you find balance between all doing all of that and maintaining your faith? And how does that play into what you do?
Yeah, so recently one of the things that I put into play is just protecting my morning and having that the kind of the miracle morning, the book Miracle Morning and everything like that. I think different people have different opinions about how that looks in their own personal life, and I've adapted it to how it looks in my life. But like, really setting your priorities from the very beginning, and having that unhurried time in the morning where you can do devotions, do some affirmations, and just get clarity. And so really my priority list that I literally write out each morning like I'm a third grader is keep your priorities straight, which is faith first, family second, and then everything else will fall into play. And so really it's just that consistent reiteration to myself, that those are my priorities, and those are, and if work is getting in the way of family time, that I have my priorities out of lack. And of course, take it with a grain of salt, because there are going to be times that there's the balancing act that needs to happen. But it's that, for me, it's that consistent discipline of reminding myself what my priorities are every day, because throughout the day I'll fail at it, but like every morning, just realigning yourself in your priorities.
I love that. What did you call it? The magic morning?
Miracle Morning.
Miracle Morning. Yeah, I call it the golden hours.
Okay,
So
yep.
I love, but like I have interviewed several hundred very successful entrepreneurs. You're one of them, who obviously, and almost every single one,
Yeah.
it takes their mornings very seriously. They're usually very clean and sober. A lot of them are either guided by Christ, or in some sort of way they have definitely a rigorous faith implemented into their life. I just interviewed another guy too. I can't remember what his name is right off the top of my head, but he reinforced one very important part for me. Is he said when you wake up, he goes, for me, it's like if somebody was watching, if there was a fly on the wall, how soon, or like you were being recorded, right? Sort of like the Truman movie. How soon after you woke up would somebody know you're a Christian? And I go, oh, that's very interesting. Like, what an interesting sort of test that you put yourself to. And I go, well, how do you do it? And he says, I try to pray the rosary within the first 15 minutes that I'm up. And I'm a Catholic too, so I've started doing that too. So I love your approach to that too. It sounds like we would know within the first 15-20 minutes where your compass is. So I have another question about Christ, and that would be, how has your faith in Christ influenced your approach to wealth building and investment decisions?
Yeah, I mean, it has a huge effect on it, and I think one of the biggest things that is, it's not all about me, and that's really the mentality that you got to take on it, because we know real estate and business is a cutthroat business, and one of the things that I say is I love what I do, but I want to do it with people that I love, and you don't always get to do that in real estate. Is sometimes you're forced to work with people who don't have the same values, don't have the same morals as you. As a W-2 employee, I would say that that's more prevalent than if you can make the decisions for yourself and for your business. And so, really just putting your values into play in your business and in your real estate, I think is super important. And like, what's that look like? That looks like giving grace where grace is needed. That looks like knowing how to keep people accountable, but also, implementing empathy and grace into those kind of conversations and decisions, and being okay to talk about your faith and how you're like, hey, yeah, I know the deadline was here, but I know you had X, Y, and Z happen, and because of that, I'll give you grace this time, but we need to make sure that we're hitting the deadline. Just handling yourself in that appropriate manner throughout all decisions that you're making within your business.
I love that word that you use. Yeah, that is grace. That word has been coming up a lot lately in my life too, and I've even tried to explain to my daughter how important it is to have grace with both of her parents. She's trying not to take sides in certain things, and all this as she grows. So beautiful. What advice would you give to young entrepreneurs or investors who are trying to navigate the intersection of their personal values or faith with their professional pursuits, especially in a competitive market like this? Like, what other kind of layer could you give them if there was just one piece of advice you could give them about maybe they have a struggle for it? I mean, let's be honest, in the society we live in right
Yeah.
now, if you came out and I think we live in a secular society. So
Yeah.
how do you make that happen?
Yeah. I think it's consistent discipline. And it takes, you're going to fail at it multiple times throughout the day, throughout the weeks and stuff like that, but bring yourself back to be balanced and to be aligned under Christ, as much as you can is super important. One thing that I will share is this past Sunday at our church, the message was on contentment and being discontent. And I think that's been, I've that's been stirring in my heart, is like being content where you are, but not giving up the ambition to get somewhere else or to get to that next step. But you still have to have contentment of where God's put you right now. How's that look? That's gonna be different for everybody. God's gonna press different ambitions and goals on everybody's life. But if you constantly have anxiety to get to that next step, or if you constantly have anxiety over, hey, what am I not doing that could progress me, then I would say that that's an indicator that you don't have contentment in where Christ has put you right now.
Yeah. The past has passed, the present's a gift, and the future's unknown, right?
Exactly.
And then we're still moving into the future constantly. So let's reflect on just a little bit of that past, if we could. Reflecting on your journey so far, what do you consider the most rewarding aspect of your of using your financial success for a greater purpose?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say being able to impact friends and family in a positive way. My wife and I, we've been very adamant about tithing and giving to the church. The 10% that's due to Christ, the first fruits, and so we've been doing that. I will say that I feel like at this point in our career, we're being able to get more and more past that 10% in other areas that we want to give, and we want to give our money or our gifts to. But at the same time, it's never easy, coming from the W2 mindset.
Mhm.
And it's never easy to just be open-handed and say, and because it doesn't matter how much money you have, it's still trusting God in that the money that you have is His, and He's going to produce more for you, and He's going to give you everything you need, and most of your wants. It doesn't matter if you have $1,000 in the bank or $1 million in the bank. Giving 10% and even giving over and above, if you're called to do that, is not always the easiest, but we're called to do it, and so it's a discipline that we need to be implementing in our lives.
Yeah, and trusting in that for sure, like you just said. It's having a mindset of abundance, right? Genesis 1:28, be fruitful and multiply. I'm with you there. Yeah, a lot. Everybody would benefit much more if we have that mindset over abundance than scarcity. We're running up on the end of the interview here.
Sure.
And I've got two questions I ask every guest. First one is, knowing what you know now, and if you could go back in time to when you first started your endeavors here with everything you do in real estate, what is one piece of advice you give your former self?
I would say don't upgrade too fast. My wife and I, when we took steps up in our personal houses and personal real estate careers, we went from the 1,500 square foot to the 3,500 square foot to the 6,000 square foot, and we always joke because our first mortgage was $530. We're like, man, that house had everything we needed. It was simple. It was nice. It was a 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage. I know you can't get that everywhere, but back in 2013, we could get that here in the Indianapolis suburb. And so, I would say a lot of people who I'm coaching right now, I'm telling them to house hack as much as possible, because I think that's a huge tool to use that I didn't get. I mean, I did a little bit just because, flip the primary, but like if you can house hack and if you can keep stacking on that, I think that's a huge concept to use right now.
100%. And it's the opportunity is still there all over, despite the crappy interest rates. You can do it. Okay, last question here. If people want to get in touch with you, if they want to follow you, how can they do that?
Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. My Instagram handle is probably the best. It's Troy_Meyers_. And so definitely reach out. And I post our Airbnbs, I post our long-term portfolio on there, and would love to connect with investors.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Lance.